You boys know what's about to happen to you. You leave now.
Some consider these traits to be toxic, such as undesirable in the men of today. We consider these traits such as these not only to be desirable, but to be appreciated and celebrated. Welcome to the Toxic Male Appreciation Show, hosted by and La Reina Creole. Welcome to the safe space for the toxic male.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'm Lorena Creole, and I know I've been gone for a while, but I am back here with my wing woman of Positive Fandom and the Burn Network. How have you been, my dear?
Lorena, I've been great, but we've missed you. We're just so glad that you are back here online with us. It hasn't been the same without you.
Oh, well, thank you. I've thoroughly missed everyone. Had fun, during my time off, but I definitely missed being in the studio behind the mic and of course streaming with you, my dear. So I'm glad band is back together. And we are literally going to start things off with a bang. So unless you've been living under a rock, or we'll say just like, hey, I'm not even really that interested. There was a movie that came out called The Little Mermaid, and turns out that it was a remake of a previous version of this film. So I have to ask, have you had a chance to see the Little Mermaid remake?
I have not had a chance to see it, but I have seen and heard a lot about this remake and seen so many different reactions to it. To be honest with you, it looks visually stunning to me, Lorena, what they were able to accomplish. And it's clear that they threw a ton of money into this film. They spared no expense. I think that they recruited a lot of talent as well to make this production spectacular. But I'm not quite sure whether it makes it out from under the sea, Lorena.
Mm. Well, as someone who has seen it and someone who has seen it in 3D, you are 100% right. There's some visual stuff that they could have done a bit better, disappointing considering how much money that Disney has. But the story doesn't make it. The story doesn't make it like, say, this version of the story made it, the original version. And I remember we had a conversation, which is why the title of this stream, why without toxic males, the Disney princess franchise fails. And that came out of just a discussion that I was having with you. And it's kind of stemmed from a rumor that I had heard about the live action Little Mermaid, which actually turned out being true. And uh, of course, out there being said that, the interest in the Disney princess franchise has dropped dramatically. That used to be one of the hottest franchises, print money between outfits, gear, swag, stuff in the parks. You just had all these little girls who just could not shake down their parents enough for money for this franchise. And I kind of started to realize the reason why that Prince Charming, that toxic male has actually been missing in that. And it didn't hit me until it's just like he's actually gone. And for most little girls, I'm gonna speak for myself and probably for a predominant bunch of girls. When we see Disney princess films, we expect that there is going to be some kind of male lead, some kind of romantic interest, even if it's not that way at the beginning. That's, that is what is expected. And usually, well, we'll just say when it comes to things like, and I'm actually gonna start with Sleeping Beauty, then I'm gonna let her kind of chime in a little bit here. When it comes to Sleeping Beauty, like the prince is very debonair and, has this sense of innocence yet romantic interest, when it comes to him, speed up to where you get to, like, say, Aladdin, where, he's like, I'm very much into this girl, but what if she doesn't, like me, kind of for what I am. And then you get to, like, say, Tangled, where Flynn Rider is just, hey, I'm that guy, Princess and the Frog, Prince Naveen is just like, the girls all want me. And that's how they start out. But eventually things start to change, and you see that journey, but that journey has just been missing. What I'd love to hear what you have to say from you.
Well, I'm almost wondering whether heterosexual relationships are under fire. Clearly, this is
Mhm.
a heterosexual relationship between a man and a woman. And yes, they are very young. Let's say, hypothetically, some of these characters we're looking at might be teenagers, but that's why it's so appealing to children. And fairy tales are told for a reason. I think for individuals who want to find a partner or find love, especially, this is, of course, Aurora. And,
Mhm.
who is Sleeping Beauty. And, she falls victim to a sleeping spell that really entraps an entire kingdom in, some horrible kind of brush with thorns in it. And, this is the prince who's looking for his true love. And there is something to be said, the search for love, the search for desire, the search for companionship. Everybody is looking for these things. Yes, there may be a lot of people who want to be alone, but the majority of us want to be with someone. And that desire is one of the major themes in a lot of these prince and princess relationships. Without it, you end up with a person who is alone. And no one can get by alone. In the real world, it's very, very difficult to do this.
Mhm.
And there's no reason why a fairy tale should be burdened with the real world experience and toughness, because then it's no longer a fairy tale to me, Lorena. Now,
Mhm.
interestingly enough, a lot of these fairy tales we're talking about with the princesses deal with magic and magical elements, but the elements are all wrapped around the idea of love and the importance of love and what love can do, how it can overcome difficult situations. And of course it's a metaphor. Are you and I going to be in brambles? No. But the idea is that we're looking for that love, and that love is going to make it easier for you to get through those hard times. And I think that's one of the
Mm.
messages. However, it doesn't work well if it's just the princess by herself. She needs her prince. And the prince is so important in so many of these circumstances. He's able to do certain things that the princess cannot do. And that is very reflective of male and female roles. I don't want to necessarily be fighting. I understand if a man feels he has to take up arms and do something like this. And I respect that man for that. And we can see right here, Lorena, he's willing to go ahead and risk his life. He may not make it out of that fight. He may not make it out, but he's willing to risk his life. I certainly am not capable of doing what this prince can do. And I
Mhm.
don't want to even do what this prince is doing. I want him to come and rescue me, get me out of whatever difficult situation it is, so I can go on and maybe even find love with him. And I think it's very interesting, the idea of what he represents. He does represent all those wonderful toxic male things that we see and want. He's on this beautiful horse. He's got armor. He's in danger. He's risking his life. He knows that something is wrong. And he's there to find out what is going on, but he's also there to find true love. And I think that his desire to protect, the desire to defend, the desire to rescue, all of these things are stemmed from a desire for love. And, we see it so strongly in a lot of the Disney princesses, the princess is very strong. She's strong, but something unfortunate has happened. And a lot of times you do need someone to help you out of these situations. So when you don't have that support system, when you don't have that man coming to rescue you in these stories, it's a very different story, has a very different tone. All of a sudden, it doesn't feel the same. And the reason why is because you don't have that toxic male there who's going to be there when you need him. He's ready. He wants to be there. There's no reason to ignore him, and there's no reason to write him out of the story.
Absolutely. Sleeping Beauty was one of the first, I will say, Disney princess tales that I read. Eventually I got Cinderella, but between like the artwork, props to Mary Blair. Oh my gosh, her artwork is just iconic. The music, the stories.
Aurora. You remember, like, do you have the with the turn the page when the bell rings like this?
Yeah. You hear that and you hear the, you hear the songs and, and you hear her just like, well, all the animals have someone, how come I don't. And I thought that was very powerful because it's like they use an example of of the animal world. Granted, we're humans, but still there's things that we see in nature. And she's just like, they have someone, but I'm just, alone and I'm by myself. And her animal friends go and steal the prince's clothes, boots, and everything. And they make it like, like a mock prince, which still proves it's like, oh, even though my friends made this up, this is still something that I want until and then the real one shows up and she's like, oh, okay, I don't um wow,
Yeah.
and you just see like that spark between between the two of them, and they're so enamored with each other that when they find out that no, you're pledged to marry someone else, it is devastating
Mhm.
to them to find that out until one of the fairy godmothers who were the OG Golden Girls. I'm gonna tell you this right now. Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. That just hit me
Mhm.
when I watched this again today when they find out that that is actually the peasant girl you were supposed to meet in the cottage in the glen. That's Aurora. That's her. And the fairy godmothers go to visit Philip, who's been imprisoned by, Maleficent, the OG villain. Okay. Turns into a darn dragon. It's freaking awesome.
It is
They
incredible.
her transformation, it's absolutely incredible, and the obstacles that she puts in the way, it's like you have to get to her in the tower, but good luck with that, buddy, because the whole kingdom is asleep for 100 years and your old ass will be leaving here on your old ass horse by the time that ends. She made it very, very plain, and you can feel that despair. But when the fairy godmothers come and they say, here's, the sword of truth, and here is, the shield, no, shield of righteousness and the sword of truth.
Mhm.
And this is what you need to go and to get the woman that you are in love with. And not only is he determined, his darn horse is determined at the same thing, because how often have we seen this trope where you have, he's the toxic male, he is going to get the girl, he's either on his horse, he is either in his car, or he is in a helicopter or whatever. They are both together and going to rescue the princess. That theme of protection, that theme of provision. He's a prince, he's heir to the kingdom, he's able to, he's able to provide for her. And it's a trial that he has to overcome to get the girl. She doesn't just, hey, here you go, you can go and get it. It's just like, no, you have to go through this fire breathing dragon to get to her. And if you don't pass it, this test, you're not worthy. You're not worthy of that.
Exactly. I think that it does demonstrate a lot of things. For example, overcoming obstacles. Clearly, for him, the obstacle is the way. He has to address this. that's happening, regardless of what anyone tells him, he has to go ahead and challenge Maleficent. And of course, as you said, in the form of the dragon or whatever form she takes, he has to go ahead and risk all of that. And ironically, in this story, it's not just Aurora whose life is, is at stake, but the lives of the entire kingdom is at stake. And only God knows how many places Maleficent has done this to. I don't think that she's sort of like a one-shot deal kind of, I'm not going to call her baddie. I'll call her
Hmm.
this entity that, kind of takes advantage of situations that she doesn't like. Supposedly she wasn't invited, and who knows?
Yeah,
It might have gotten lost in the mail. Who knows?
she
Um,
took that personal.
but yeah, but she didn't have enough grace just to crash the party. I think she could have walked in there with her head held high, wished Aurora a happy birthday or whatever it was, and then
Hmm.
go home with some cake on a plate. But you know something? There's all different types of personalities, and even thinking about the idea of the person who may be the baddie in the story is something
Hmm.
to think about. When she has her transformation to a dragon, you start to realize she's a lot more powerful
Yeah.
than you originally see, and that's why she's able to pretty much cast the spell where the entire kingdom is
Hmm.
in Briarwood. So not any ordinary character or entity can do that. So it's a magical world that a lot of these princesses live in, and princes. And so there has to be that magic element, something that feels magical in the story. And there's a lot in Sleeping Beauty. The beautiful music, and of course the fairy godmothers, and of course this element of Maleficent and her ability to kind of wreak havoc, but also the prince who knows that if he can get to Aurora and give her a kiss of true love, he can awaken her. I don't know whether he knows that it's going to restore the entire land. I don't know if he knows that. What I think he's looking at is that he's so overcome by what he finds in this Briarwood that he's maybe even just shocked. He doesn't even know what to do. Like, what do you do in this situation? All right, I'm going to give her, a kiss. And, I don't even think he thought this would have awakened her. I don't even know if he really knew. But what I do think is interesting is he fell in love with her there. And there
Hmm.
was this love connection that happens when he does see her. Of course, she gets older as she's, as the time progresses, but she remained, I guess she's an adult, even though it's been maybe 100 years. Um,
Hmm.
but I think that he is overcome with emotion, and that is what kind of breaks the spell. These feeling and emotion that he has for her, it is actually quite an overwhelming idea, because when you kiss somebody, it's like an act of passion. It's a passionate kind of, this is not sort of like you're kissing your mom. This is
Yeah.
this is the kiss you give to somebody that you're in love with. So it's usually a very passionate kiss, one filled with a lot of emotion, with a lot
Hmm.
of feeling. There's a lot behind this. We see in movies with couples kissing one another, and we know what's at stake. Like, it's not sort of just something that they're just doing out of ritual. It's because they love and care about one another, and that's how they're showing that. And we do see that quite clearly here in the story. Without that, I mean, how on earth is this going to work? There's no romance if you remove him from the equation. And great, so you recovered on your own. Well, guess what? That sucks. And I've got to tell you that the Cinderella version that Drew Barrymore did, when she played Cinderella,
Yes.
at the end of the story, she walks out of the couch. She's like, I can't take this anymore. I got to walk out. But it felt meaningless because she walked out and she was by herself. But guess what? Her prince was there to meet her. And so I think they made it so that she could, maybe kind of bust out, kind of get out of there. But she needed that support. She needed the person who loved her. None of this stuff means anything without love. And, a mature adult love, this type of love, is also necessary for the princesses. We don't want our princesses to be without their princes.
You are 100% right, because again, I call them the Golden Girls, but they are literally the mature sages who reinforce the fact of why love is important. maybe Maleficent is the way she is because she's never experienced love and the power of what, of what that has. And exactly like you were saying, the younger princesses need to realize that. They weren't saying, you don't need a man, you don't need him. It's just, you need the one that is worthy of you. Love is worth it in so many, in so many ways. You saw how much the king and queen loved their baby daughter, how distraught they were, when Maleficent curses her, how much these three mature women love this young baby, that the fact that they give up magic for 16 years because they want to keep her, they want to keep her safe. And the fact that they realize that these two love each other and they are willing to do whatever it is that they have to do to give the prince a fighting chance, because they know if you go in there without being armed, you're just cannon fodder. So we are going to give you the tools that that you need. And I love how the end of this, and I agree with you, I don't think that he knew it was going to wake the whole kingdom up, but it did. And not only did it wake up the whole kingdom, but the kingdom was happy again because of these two. And what a wonderful way, to wrap that up. What a positive story of masculinity and femininity together, and you need those two things.
You really do. It doesn't work when you remove one or the other. Honestly, it's a solo journey, and I'm sorry, but solo journeys are not as enjoyable, especially for a princess or a prince. It's very lonely. Look at Princess Margaret, who wanted to marry that,
Oh,
and it struck headlines around the world. She wanted her prince, and they were like, well, he was not a prince, but she wanted the man that she was in love with, and it was huge to her. I mean, she needed to be with somebody just like the rest of us. It's natural to want to be with someone and have these desires. So I
hmm
think it really just kind of demonstrates, I mean, certainly it's responsible behavior because they didn't do anything wrong and they're listening to their elders. And
hmm
certainly, that's very important too. Sometimes when they don't listen is when they can get in trouble. This is not one of those situations, but let's say if like in the case with the Little Mermaid, that's essentially what happens is that she doesn't listen to her elders because her dad could have probably helped her out, but um,
hmm
she didn't. She wanted to kind of do it on her own pace, and that was kind of very interesting
right.
that she would be the one chosen for the new film. And if any changes were made, if it played up to the fact that she had sort of more of a nature where she's willing to wander off in the big wide sea, so to speak, I could see them capitalizing on that. But remember, she's looking for love. She's looking for love. She wants to fall in love with this prince. Her whole goal is to fall in love with this prince, and absolutely no other goal whatsoever for the Little Mermaid. So that's something else to think
Absolutely.
about too. She doesn't want to conquer the world. She doesn't want to do any of that stuff. She doesn't want to be in the pageants that her dad has. She doesn't want to. Her other sisters are like, oh, how do I look? Am I good for the pageant? Oh
Oh
my
my
god!
God, do I look good? Do I look good? Do I look wonderful? Do I look stunning? And Ariel's just like, I don't care about that. I want to go and get my stuff. But when she rescues Eric, she's just like, I want to be I wanted to be part of this world, but because of how I feel about this human, I'll do anything to be part of it, because I would say, like, say, with the updated version of The Little Mermaid, it's like, yes, it's just, because I want to be part of that world. With the original is, I want to be part of that world, but I want to be part of that world with you, part of your
Her world.
world. That's
Yes.
what that song means, not by myself, in a world of my own. Hey, I'm here in the human world. It was, I can't go there. I really have no reason to think I'd ever be there, but I'll collect all this stuff to make me feel like I'm there. But until I see someone, meet someone, touch someone, have this life or death experience with someone from that world, now I want to share that world with you. And that is what made the original Little Mermaid so popular. I mean, with me, it's like I read the story, but loved that so much because we felt that we're like, yeah, girl, we're with you.
Yeah, and I think it is pretty important. And I almost wonder how men feel, how they're kind of being um, pushed aside almost. We're seeing a lot of that where, toxic males are being pushed aside. And, suddenly now they have to kind of create a story that doesn't have as much meaning because, it's not as exciting or exhilarating doing things on your own. I mean, you really do need that companionship. And there is something to be said for that, the desire of wanting to be with someone. It's really strong in these stories. So to remove that element and also to remove the toxic male, it's like half the story is removed. Now, what kind of story do you have? I don't know what you're going to achieve here.
No, it's like why should I watch? I mean, even going back to Snow White, another classic, classic one where there's several toxic males. You have the huntsman where the evil queen basically said, "Yeah, I want you to go find her, cut her heart, kill her, cut her heart out and bring it back to me." And the huntsman's just like, "I can't do this." He's just like, I can't do this because there's this, this girl who he feels compelled to protect her. He's like, run away and never come back. Well, she runs into what? Seven dwarves that find her. She makes a deal. I'll clean and do this and help you all wash up and have good manners. And they're like, okay, okay. But they love her to death. They're just like, we'll give you a roof over your head and everything. That's the bargain, but don't talk to strangers. And sure enough, when she does, it's the evil queen disguised as an old woman with a poison apple. She eats it, boom, dirt nap for Snow White. And you see just how heartbroken they are because they felt like they could not, that they failed to protect her.
Yeah,
And
and
they don't know what to
clearly,
do.
Snow White has never, actually trick or treated or anything like that.
Yeah.
So, so she's, unfortunately very vulnerable. She's been running
Hmm.
from this person, and this person has found her, but they know that they can't just approach her unless they trick her. And it's
Right.
really terrifying. We've heard horror stories about stuff like this in real life. So it really does translate. But I do like the idea, Lorena, as you said, where they're like, "Oh, and kill this person," and he's like, "Holy shit, this chick,
No, right?
the hottest chick I've ever seen. You want me to kill her?" He's like, I don't think I can't do this." Oh shit, like he's like, what the hell am I gonna do?
Like, woman, are you not okay? You could kill me. So yeah, sure, I'll do it.
He's
But
like, he already knows that he can't do it as soon as he sees her. So it is very funny. And I think that sometimes, you know, in these stories, you are presented with a moral dilemma. And the dilemma is that someone is asking you to do something you shouldn't be doing. So, maybe in
Mhm.
his particular case, this is something that even though he's the huntsman, perhaps he should have been hunting livestock or animals versus hunting someone for their heart. I mean, look at it. He's going after her heart. Well, she captured his heart. So it looks like he fell under her spell, more or less. Um,
Because this is the prince who
mhm.
comes along like later on. Like he just happens to come across the scene where Snow White's there. She's dead. Everybody's crying. The animals are crying. The birds are crying. Everyone's, just sad. And there's just like dim light and everything. He just rolls up there and no, she's so beautiful. Just rolls up there and rolls up there and kisses her. I think I want to say it was he knew. I think he knew that it was no. I don't think he did. That was true love's kiss. He just like fell in love with her, rolled up there, kissed her. Boom! Guess what? She's alive. This is great. Everything's great. Everything's perfect. And of course, you have some people. If there was ever a lightning bolt for people trashing toxic men, this is it.
Oh, is it?
How yes, how dare the prince just go up there and kiss her without her consent? I kid you not. I'm just
Yeah.
like, I'm sorry. Did we not
He thinks she's dead. That's why he's kissing her. He thinks she's dead. He doesn't know that she's still alive. He doesn't know that if he kisses her that she's going to awaken. He does I don't think he knows that. I think he thinks she's dead because she got the needle, not the needle prick, she ate the apple and that it's, she's gone. But I don't, it's kind of like if you care about someone and you have a spouse and they're deceased and you kiss them, it's not unconsensual. It's at a moment where you're grieving the person.
mhm, exactly. And just to kind of I'll show you to go to what I was talking about. There was literally a ride called Snow White's Scary Adventure. Okay, and
Mm.
they used to have this in Disney World, replaced it with Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, which is a crap attraction. But you had people who had problems with the prince kissing her non-consensually. Here's the thing. In the original one with the Snow White Scary Adventures, and it was scary. That's why I freaking loved it. It even included that scene with the huntsman's voice saying run and never come back. And there's lightning and thunder and Snow White scared and everything. And at the end, there's a scene, where she's lying there. She's dead. Everybody's crying, upset. And you see, like the light of the prince, riding up on the scene. And this is what he sees. Next scene, you see him like kiss her. The next scene after that, everybody's happy, jumping around. This is great. This is wonderful. And it's a beautiful scene because all throughout the ride, it's like, that's what you're waiting for, to see. But apparently that was a problem. So now they called it Snow White's Enchanted Wish. And that's one of the reasons why the Snow White 7 Mine Train ride is so, what I would say is soulless. And Culture Casino and I have talked about this. Without the Snow White story, it's basically eh, just a ride that shows you, what the seven dwarves do when they mine and they come back. And, basically there's a party with Snow White. It's like, no, in the story, they went to work. They came back and found Snow White dead on the floor with an apple that she'd bitten out of. And that
Unbelievable.
part's missing.
Unbelievable. That was really important to have there because it was what killed her. She's presumably dead. This is, it's a serious part of the story. And, I just don't understand why they're so upset with the prince, rescuing her. I don't get it. Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't get it either. And one of the things actually that just hit me, one of the reasons why the seven dwarves were so broken up and upset was because they couldn't protect her. And how many scenes have we seen in movies when toxic men fail at protecting someone? How they feel like they're less than a man if they weren't able, to do that, and they're hell bent on redeeming themselves. And in this story, it's like the dwarves were just like, there's no way we can, redeem it until Prince rolls up. Why is everybody so sad? Oh well, she's dead, and she can only be my true love's kiss. Yeah, okay, all right. Rolls up there and you know and gets it done. But this scene, it's just like he does what he needs to do in order to bring her back to life, and it's not something that's like, oh, she was sleeping and this just stranger just rolled up and did this. It's just like,
No.
no, she was dead, and we knew in the story that this had to happen.
I mean, in Romeo and Juliet, there are certain scenes where Juliet is kissing Romeo and he's dead because he poisoned himself. And she kisses him even though he's, literally deceased. He's killed himself. And, I think she says, "Oh, you didn't save any poison for me." And then she decides to unfortunately finish herself. But I think
Hmm.
it's very interesting. Are they saying that that's an unconsensual kiss as well? It's really just trying and reaching for things that you don't like in a story. That's what that
Right,
is.
right. And it's such a shame. It's such a shame that it's so-called problematic. It's like, what are we teaching our young people now, that it's just you shouldn't have feelings for someone? It's a shame that it's gone this way, but it's just becomes more and more aggravating the more I will say, princess movies that will come out that are nowhere near what they used to be, or reinforcing those lessons of of a princess movie. To kind of, speaking of kisses, and I kind of have two. The reason why I'm showing the scene here, of course, is Princess and the Frog. Now, we all know that story where the frog's like, but if you kiss me, I'll turn into a prince. Like, yeah, I don't know. Really? Really? Should I kiss you? Really? And then she does, and boom, it turns out he's a prince. But
Mhm.
in this story, which is really funny, it's like the prince, of course, he turns into a frog, but then you have Tiana, which is your hardworking girl in 1930s New Orleans. She kisses the frog, and you think that he's going to turn into a prince, but no, she turns into a frog.
Mhm.
And he's this lazy, spoiled, prince who has had everything done in his life. Tiana, she's just about that hustle, about getting that bag, even though people tell her, you need to have love in your life. That's exactly what her mother says, voiced by Oprah Winfrey,
Mhm.
says. She says, your father and I didn't have much money, but we had what was important. We had love. And she touches her face. And it's just, I was just like, oh my God, I remember stuff like this. Remember, hearing that. And you see this relationship between the spoiled prince and the type A working girl, and eventually they start to learn from each other, to the point where Tiana realizes that she needs love in her life, and Naveen realizes that, Tiana works so hard. I need to work hard to support her dream. He comes to that conclusion, all on his own. He's just like, I have the resources to provide, to do this, and I just want to do that, to eventually they wind up getting married in the end.
Yeah, and it is beautiful. To be honest with you, this is something, and that I question a lot, are people who are looking at these stories and trying to correct them. This desire to correct certain things in these stories and these fairy tales. And of course, a lot of these adaptations that Disney has done, it may not be the exact story that, word for word, the exact story was like originally. We know that it's an
Mhm.
adaptation that Disney created that they felt was appropriate, and quite, beautiful in a lot of cases, especially this scene right here. Beautiful stories told, done so wonderfully. The idea that anything needs to be corrected is a fantasy. It's really down to someone who is saying that they don't like this and they don't want this to be around, and they're pulling offense from something that really shouldn't be offensive at all.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like, what about this is so offensive? Is it offensive that two people love each other? Is it offensive that you have a character that is unapologetically feminine, a character that is unapologetically masculine,
Mhm.
and what you see is a real evolution? Well, even though it's in cartoon form, evolution of a relationship, which one is the thing that makes rom-com so popular, and two is what makes princess movies, so popular. I mean, the early ones, yeah, you meet them, fall in love, whatever, but later on they got to be more realistic, kind of like, like in Frozen when they talk about he's more of a fixer-upper, the whole song, which is so cute because the trolls are trying to sell, just how great Kristoff is, even though he smells like reindeer. And, and they're just like, hey, he's just a fixer-upper, but he's got it, where it counts. And eventually Anna sees that. But there's that relationship progression that we saw there. And there's that's something really that children need to see. They see things like this in a context that they can understand in order to be able to relate, to the way to the world around him around them. And the reason why I thought of that, which I loved seeing this movie again. I had such a great time watching this. Is the film now? This is from the Pixar film Brave.
Yes.
Have you seen this one?
I haven't seen this film, no.
It is a very I like it. You have Merida, who has her red hair and she's heavy Scottish accent. If you ever meet her like friend or actor in the parks, she's flipping hilarious with the thick Scottish brogue that she has and just fun, fun loving. She's got three triplet brothers, red haired brothers that are just nuts. And, a father that is actually, I think he was missing, was it part of his leg or part of his arm? Because a bear had like attacked her, like tried to attack her when she was a baby. And he's, and he saved her from that. Her mother, they're both in love and everything, and the UPS guy is at the door. I'll be right back.
All right. So Rainy will be right back in a few seconds. We're talking about the role that toxic males play in the stories of Disney princesses. And I think it's very interesting just realizing how important that is. Um, it really is an incredibly important part of the story. Um, and it's really needed. I think that to have that element removed from what we're witnessing, that's okay. I was just saying, I was talking about the toxic male element in in Disney princess stories that is really prevalent and has lasted for so long, such an important section and element of the story. I don't want it to ever go away. I don't think that the stories will last without the toxic male.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. In this movie, Brave, sorry, UPS guy. In
Yeah.
this movie, Brave, Merida's basically been told, hey, you are going to have several suitors who will go through certain trials, we'll say like the Scottish Highland Games, in order to get the privilege of marrying you. You
Wow.
know, feats of strength, agility, those we've seen these types of things before. Merida's like, why do I have to do this? This is ridiculous. I shouldn't have to do this. This is because she has a whole lot of tension with her mother. And during that tournament, this like mystery person shows up and is like out shooting everybody. And she shows up and she says, my name is Merida and I'll be, fighting for my own hand, and her mother's like, you've got to be kidding me. Merida doesn't think anything is wrong with that. She's just showing up these boys, whatever, just like, can't beat me. Why do I need you? I don't need you. I don't need any of you. I don't need a husband. I don't have to. And her mother, literally, again, the mature wisdom. pulls her aside and says, you have a duty the way that I have a duty. It's not just about a marriage, it's about keeping the kingdoms and the clans united together. And then she says, how do you think those young men felt when you embarrassed them that way? And I'm like, wow, she actually brought that out. It's like to think of someone other than yourself, because for them, competition, and we've seen this among toxic males, competition is something that they like to rise to. And she's basically saying, you just pretty much took the wind out of their sails, basically emasculated them for doing that. And she doesn't really quite take it seriously. She looks, but she doesn't, take it very seriously at all. Well, long story short, her mom turns into a bear because she does some kind of curse where she wants her mom out of her life, but she has to go, and like go to see her mom and try to bring her mom back from this curse. But the husband, her father, he is like broken up that his wife is gone and that his wife is missing. And Merida starts to see just with fresh eyes what her parents' relationship is like and what they've been trying to tell her. So I won't spoil the movie, but I really did like how they did this, where there isn't a Disney, quote unquote, Disney prince, but the relationship is there, a relationship between a man and a woman, between unapologetically toxic male and feminine as well. So I thought this was a really, really cool way to put it together and to kind of show, to show children, we'll say children, we'll say young adults or coming of age or whatever, of how important those relationships are.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's an excellent example. Her mother tries to tell her. In fact, what you're talking about reminds me of A House of the Dragon, when all those guys show up to marry one of
That's the dad. Oh my God, it's Billy Connolly. Billy Connolly and I think and Emma Thompson as the voice of the mother and the father. Oh my God.
Well, it looks amazing. And as I was saying, it reminds me of that scene where, and I know this is not Disney, but in House of the Dragon, where everybody showed up to marry the princess, and even young kids are showing up. And somebody's making fun of this one kid who's there, for a chance to be, a prince to her. And he ends up like having a physical altercation and killing somebody because he takes it 100% more serious than everyone else. I mean, I think it is really interesting that they decided to make that the focus. That's a huge focus of this story is, how is she going to be as an adult and how's her relationship with men going to be? I think her rejection of this idea of kind of having this marriage, I guess more or less it would be kind of arranged because you're presenting her with people that she's supposed to be with rather than her finding somebody on her own. But it is very interesting to see that relationship. And honestly, if your parents go through that trouble to try and find an appropriate suitor, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But Lorena, you mentioned Tangled earlier.
Yes.
And Tangled was another one. Of course, it's a Rapunzel style story. And I loved Tangled. I mean, the songs were not quite the best that they could have been, but the animation of where she's like using her hair as a lasso and doing all sorts of
I love that.
it was incredible. And so she throws her hair out. This woman who may or may not be her mom, we don't know. She's climbing up the golden stair and all that sort of stuff. And one thing that I thought was really interesting was this man who she ends up with. He does something at the end of the story. Now, I had never really understood what happened with Rapunzel or how she got out of that, tower where she's kind of pretty much trapped in this tower, right? She stayed up there because, she's been told by the old lady to stay up there. Anyway, she climbs down one day and she sees this man, and clearly he's a prince. Like, if you look at him, he's a prince. But what I thought was interesting was that at the end of the story, um, the woman who's chasing after Rapunzel, she won't stop chasing after her. She wants Rapunzel's powers. And so this might be one of the most interesting stories because she's pretty much feeding off of Rapunzel.
Mm-hmm.
And she
Yeah.
doesn't care what happens to Rapunzel. She needs to have that power. She'll do anything to get this power from this girl. And what does he do in the story? He cuts her hair in the story.
I remember that.
And the
With
woman
his
was like,
dying breath
"No."
cuts
Yeah,
her hair.
no, like that, when her hair was cut, because this woman believes that Rapunzel's power is tied up in her hair. Like this, if she loses her hair, she won't have any power. And ironically, that wasn't true, but he knew he had to do something to convince this woman to leave her alone.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't even a point where he could have actually done something like we've seen in other stories where the toxic male actually kills the baddie, but he does something he outsmarts her with this notion. She believes all the powers in the hair, and it isn't. And I just thought that was very clever. But you see, even Rapunzel was tricked in this. Now, I'm curious as to why he knew. You know what it was? He didn't care. He just wanted Rapunzel. He just wanted her to be safe and happy. And he didn't care if she'd lost her powers or not. That wasn't important to him. Her having powers was not important to him at all. He loved this girl and he wanted her to be safe. And that's all he cared about.
Mm-hmm.
And
that was it.
Certainly, for me, the victory in this film is the fact that she is completely unaware that, life would still go on, even if she, had the powers or not. But the fact that she still has them, that surprised me. I'm almost wondering if he knew. He kind of sensed something was wrong. And I think he thought, I don't think the powers in the hair, I don't think it's there. I mean, I think that a person in this particular case, she was tricked. And, maybe this woman sensed that she had these abilities. And so she made it seem as if you leave this, bad things will happen to you. This was going to happen. Meanwhile, she's leaving like every weekend, right? Or leaving every time the woman leaves. She's like hopping out of the tower.
Mm-hmm. She's like, yeah, I'm going. Woo, yeah, okay, let me hurry up. Let me get back up. Okay. I didn't go anywhere, Mother Gothel. I've been here, the whole entire time. And Flynn Rider is kind of just like, really? She's like a prisoner.
Yeah, and she doesn't know she's a prisoner. This is a very interesting story, is that he kind of is like, enough is enough. This has gone too far. And the toxic male in me is not going to allow this to happen anymore.
Exactly. And that's why I think Mother Gothel had told him that the power was in Rapunzel's hair.
Yes.
I think so, because it was kind of like that Bond villain where they keep talking too much and they keep revealing everything. Like, oh, okay, now I found out, what to do. And I think it was a choice between saving himself and letting her go. And the fact that he had made that choice to free her, like the last protective act, with his last breath, he did something to protect her. It's like when you see the hero take the bullet to protect someone, or protect the woman, that he loves, and he thinks he's dead. Oh, guess what? Oh, he's got a faint pulse. Okay, she's been hospital, all that. But that was extremely powerful. And another reason why Rapunzel and this whole movie here, Tangled, was so popular. I mean, I was flattered with how this came out. I think this came out, I want to say, yeah, it came out the year after The Princess and the Frog came out, and I want to say it's probably the last. Am I wrong? I may be wrong, but it's either the last or next to the last princess movie. Because wait, no,
Oh,
Brave
really?
was 2012. So I'll say it ended with with Brave, with Merida, with Merida, so to speak, with all the princesses. That I would say that was the princess cabal or stable, or so to speak. The collection of princesses, which is why in Wreck-It Ralph Breaks the Internet, which the movie was freaking horrible, where they brought like all the other princesses, and the princesses couldn't understand Merida, and they're like, she's from that other studio. But the whole thing was about the princesses, and and what makes little girls go to the parks to see these characters, what makes them want to watch, the DVDs or digital copies over and over again, where they want the costumes, they want the outfits. The likes of Walmart have their toy aisle stocked with princess toys.
Mhm.
And that's why. But not only do you have the princess toys, it's almost like Barbie. You can't sell Barbies without selling Ken dolls.
Yes.
And you can't do that. I mean, you have it, but it's just like eventually, you're gonna have to get, Malibu Ken, or, you know, totally rad Ken, or whatever. You can't have one without the other. You could just have a bunch of Barbies, but it's not it's not the same. It's not the play isn't there. Eventually, if you leave girls alone long enough, they're like, "Oh, this is my boyfriend." Or if you're like me and you had Barbie, GI Joe was basically in the house instead of Ken. Ken was the butler. But but there's that thing, and that's how girls play. The majority. Yes, I'm going to be sexist. And
Well, there's one other thing I want to say is that in the picture you'll notice that the male character has a frying pan in his hand, and I think that kind of represents his street smarts, because he had to kind of be street smart. He was looking for a question, he was looking kind of for something with meaning, but he had to
Mhm.
kind of be street smarts, because what he was up against, that wasn't normal. This was just so unusual that he encountered, and he knew something was up. He knew something was up. He's like, this woman is basically being kept a prisoner. So I kind of
Mhm.
like that, rather than him hold, of course he can hold a sword, but it was very funny. What is it? The horse has the
The
sword.
horse has the sword. I love the horse in this. This horse had. Usually the horses are very, reserved and whatever, kind of like how we saw in Sleeping Beauty,
Yes.
right? But this horse had a serious attitude. I love it.
Well, it certainly was a wonderful story as well. And to be honest with you, I didn't know, or at least when I first saw it, what was going to happen. I didn't know he was going to do that action, but that was
Mhm.
incredibly important to the story. And if he didn't do that, if that didn't happen, she would have been trapped forever. She would have never seen her family again. She would have never known true love. I think that the mother would have just gone, I know it's Mother Bothell or something like that. She would have kept
Mhm.
her up there. She would have found a way to make sure Rapunzel never left the tower, or she would have put her in a place where Rapunzel could never really leave. So he got her out of
Absolutely.
there really in the nick of time. And I'm
Mhm.
so glad that he did that. But once again, toxic male. He wasn't going to do it. I'm still surprised that he did that. I'm still like, wow, like, wow.
That was one of those, I will say, one of those themes that just I was stunned
Yeah.
by the end of it, and it was, an ending that I never forgot, and I love it. It's absolutely beautiful. But to kind of wrap things up a little bit, while Disney is getting further and further away from including toxic males in with their princess franchise, do you want to know what franchise has learned that lesson and has been applying it consistently, so much so that their spin-offs do crazy amounts of money?
Which franchise, Lorena?
Let's say the Shrek franchise from day one, from the first movie. Oh my god. before I even knew a word about it. First of all, Shrek is just a straight up ogre. If you want to talk about toxic male, this was him bathing in the mud, farting in the mud, you know. Hey, I'm in my swamp. I don't need anybody. I don't need anyone. And only goes after the princess to get all the fairy tale creatures out of his swamp.
I do have to say that this story did also kind of surprise me as well, because I didn't realize what the princess was going to do or what she had to do or what she needed to do to kind of be with him. And of course, it's a metaphor for the changes that happen in your life when you are with somebody new. But I wasn't expecting that. I didn't know how they were going to be together, because it seemed like the way that they were, a change would have to be made. I didn't know she could do that. I didn't know that was even possible. Um, I think it is very interesting what she did for love, because it meant that much to her, and she's very happy that she did this.
Absolutely, very happy. And I'm trying to find I should have had this lined up. But I'm trying to find the really cool picture of the two of them like at the end. So for folks who didn't know about this particular film, he goes after to go save the princess. He's going to save the princess to give her to Lord Farquaad as a wife. He's like, I don't care about this chick. He's like, I just want my swamp back. If I do this, I'll get these creatures out my swamp. It'll be fine. But he meets her, in her princess form. He's just like, oh, start princess. I don't know if I particularly, like her. And it turns out she doesn't really look like that all the time.
Yes.
And she only looks like that. She only looks like the proper princess.
Yeah,
Human form during the day. But at night, she turns into an ogre, and she doesn't think. I mean, by the time she's like, maybe I have feelings for this guy, she's like, I don't think he's going to love me because I'm not beautiful. And at the end, when they're talking about love's true form, like when she found her true love, no one believed us. Like, Shrek, is it really? The ogre's in love with the princess? Really? And everybody's laughing. And she kisses him, and she changes to ogre form, and she's like disappointed. She's just like, I'm not beautiful.
Yeah.
And he tells her, no, you are beautiful. I'm like, dang. just everything that he went through, even when they tried to pay him off, but he was like so in love with her. He was in love with her for who she was.
Yes.
And even when it turned out that she was like him and he wasn't alone, he was even more, in love with her. And I think this is why I love this franchise. It's so funny. Oh my gosh. The second was funnier than the first, but they still focus on this relationship between Shrek and Fiona. You see them, quote unquote dating in a way, and then they're married, meet the in-laws, they have kids.
It's a romantic comedy, the first one.
Yes, very much so. Even with the donkey hooking up with the dragon, and they have little dragon donkey babies.
I mean, it definitely, there's some elements where they're kind of joking around, and it's typically what you would see in a couple. It really did strike a nerve, I think, with a lot of people. And it was a very, very good twist to the story. If given the choice, how would you appear, knowing that, I think it was something to think about when it comes to how much they really care about one another and what's important for them.
Exactly. And especially when, I mean, people talk about how superficial, men are, but when it comes down to it, he was in love with her for who she was.
Mm-hmm.
Even though at first he's like, "Ah, you're ungrateful, whatever. Yeah, I'll be glad when I dump you off with Farquaad or whoever the heck he is, and I can get back to my swamp." And it turns out that that he has feelings for her, and he's willing to be vulnerable in order to do that. And that's something that the Shrek franchise gets right, and that's something that the Disney franchise used to get right, but they're not getting it right anymore. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Shrek franchise has just blown up. But I think they're actually in talks to do the fifth movie, and Puss in Boots, those spin-off movies, almost the same darn thing. The dynamic between him, Puss in Boots, voiced by Antonio Banderas of all people,
Hmm.
and Kitty Softpaws, their relationship. It's just something that DreamWorks continues to get right. And you cannot have this type of genre where you have the princess story, but you don't have a toxic male. There's no way. Neither one can exist without the other. Last thoughts? I'll get that from you, my dear.
Yeah, the hot take. We need our toxic males in modern stories, but we also need them to still be around to rescue those princesses out there and to make a difference. They matter too, and they are a huge part of the story. I don't want to be alone, neither do the princesses. Let's bring them together and enjoy the love.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, my dear, please do let the folks know where they can find you.
Well, guys, you can always find me on my channel, Positive Fandom, where I do all the parlay in the fandom. I do my show, Sunday Brunch, on Sundays at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can also find me on my channel playing Star Wars Jedi Survivor, as well as Star Trek Resurgence. Having a lot of fun doing some live gameplay. And you can also find me on the Burn Network. Lorena, you and I have our show, Ladies of the PGS, on Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But we also are doing watch parties, enjoying ourselves. I'm on this channel a lot, Lorena. It's such a pleasure that you are back and we can get back into our Toxic Mail show, which is happening right now. And you guys, you can also find me later tonight. Later tonight at 9 p.m. on the 1/6 Scale Man Network, or on El Profesoro's channel for Uncivilized Scoundrels, the Star Wars show that we do. So there's a lot going on, guys. So glad to be here. Thank you so much, Lorena. Great that you are back.
Oh, well, I'm glad to be back. Glad to be back with my wing woman. So glad to be back streaming with you. I love streaming with you on my channel, on your channel, on the network.
Mhm.
Always a pleasure. And I'm always, always, always up for it. Folks, go subscribe to her Positive
Yes,
Fandom and the
please.
Burn Network.
Yes.
Please do subscribe to me for pop culture talk, live streams, watch parties, gaming. I'm a little bit behind with my gaming, but I'm not getting back up there. And of course, just theme park commentary and live streams. So, folks, thank you so very much. Please make sure you hit that like button. Let us know in the comments what you thought about the show. And of course, we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.